Yuliana, Carolina, welcome back to the Social Shifters podcast. It's nice to say that. In this podcast, we speak to the innovators, leaders, and entrepreneurs of tomorrow, doing incredible things in their part of the world. In this case, you guys in Colombia with ConEducación have been working to enable access to education for people in vulnerable positions in disenfranchised communities, and particularly in rural parts of Colombia. You're doing incredible work, and I'm so delighted that we can have you back on the Social Shifters podcast in 2024 after your win in 2023. How does it feel to be back and to be here as winners this time?
Thank you so much, David, for this invitation. We're very honored and happy to be back here and to have great news to share, like having been awarded one of the prizes this past year. We're very excited and looking forward for a lot of things in this new year.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for having us back, and for also giving us the opportunity to continue learning and growing beside you and with your help. So we're thrilled to be here.
It's so good to have you back. For me, you're back a second time. I know all about what you're doing and what you have been doing, but for anyone listening who doesn't know either of you as individuals or ConEducación and the good work that you've been doing for some time now, can you give everyone a summary of who you are and what you do?
So my name is Carolina, and I am a biologist. I'm a teacher. I'm based in Colombia. And what we do at ConEducación is, with our program Somos Bachilleres, is foster and facilitate access to higher education for students in rural areas in our country. This is innovative and super important because in rural communities, access to higher education is very limited. In schools, there are not such things as college counselors or counselors that could help students figure out what they want to study or how they're going to do that life, like accomplish that life project. And that's kind of the gap that we're trying to fill in order to create educational equity in our country.
I'm Juliana. I'm also a teacher, a foreign languages teacher. I used to be an English teacher in Colombia, but I'm currently teaching Spanish in Boston, Massachusetts. And as a teacher, as Caro said, we were able to see how many students wanted to go to college, but when you come from a disadvantaged background and your parents didn't go to college, there are a lot of doubts and barriers and difficulties when navigating the college application process. So when you ask a student, do you want to go to college? The answer is, sure, I do. But sometimes the deadline goes by and students end up not applying. And that's something I saw in urban schools in my hometown, Medellin. But then when we go into the rural areas, it's even, the reality is even harsher and more difficult for students who are, have to make that move from a very far away town with very little access to resources and try to pursue higher education. It's a big milestone. And that's what we're trying to do, to support them in that transition to make it successful.
Such important work. Thanks for kind of summarizing it for us to help those of us who maybe would struggle to understand the context that you're describing in rural parts of Colombia and in the kind of worst case scenarios. Can you describe to us what that experience can be like, what that difficulty, where that difficulty arises, and what sorts of barriers and limitations are there which prevent young people from accessing higher education?
I think one of the biggest barriers that students encountered is the big academic gap. Like students in rural areas do not get the same quality of education. Oftentimes, depending on the weather, they can lose power. And if they lose power, they lose internet, electricity. And sometimes they can have classes, they cannot have school because of these issues. And so not having the academic tools in order to compete for a seat in college, compared with students who attended more affluent schools, that already puts them in a disadvantaged position when trying to consider applying to college. So I would say that's like the first biggest major barrier that students encountered, along with the fact that, as I mentioned before, like most of our students are first generation students. Their parents did not go to college. So they don't have like the support of someone, in their families, in their in their circle, to guide them, to support them in navigating the system. I know for people, who are in other countries, know that, some high schools have this position of college counselor, but that's not a thing in Colombia. There's no college counselors in school. So you either know how to do it, you either figure out how to do it, or you just don't do it. So it is really, really harsh. And not all colleges have the same, although it's similar, not all colleges have the same application process. All the websites look different. Like the labeling of things, the way they name things are different. So for us, student who has had very little, contact with that higher education word, navigating that, understanding that, and figuring all that out, it's really complex.
I would add, just for people who are not familiar with Latin America or have never probably been to a country like Colombia, when we're talking about rural areas, it's not like a town that's close by, that's easy to access, or that people from the town maybe have a large city close by. We're talking about places that are very, very far away. So, for example, one of the towns that we have been working with since 2021, which is called Orocué in Casanare, Colombia, it's about 5 or 6 hours away from a major city. And that is a ride on like a road,
Dirty
but
road.
half of the time it's a dirt road. And when it rains in that area, the time can increase. So these are people that are in very, very remote places, and their town is tiny. There are no colleges in this town. The nearest college they have is in Yopal, the large city that I'm talking about, that's 6 hours away. And there are a lot of basic needs that are not really well covered. So they have a tiny hospital, but if they, for example, need an X-ray, they have to go to the big city. So we're talking about places that have very, very difficult conditions. So when a student is born in these kind of places and has lived their lives in these places, and they're, 16, finishing college, finishing high school, and probably have never been to another place or to a larger city, less so one of the major cities in the countries where you have multiple colleges, just that makes a really big difference on the ideas and perspectives you can have on your own life. So maybe they say, yes, I want to go to college, but how does a college look like? No idea, because many of them have not been away from their own like realities. And that is something that we worked really hard in, like breaking that idea of how they visualize themselves and what they can dream of. Because if you don't know there's a larger world out there that you can have access to and you have the right to have access to, you cannot dream about accessing it, and you cannot build that dream. So that's another big difference. If you go to an affluent school in a major city, they're dreaming about studying abroad, and they're thinking about different colleges and private schools that they want to go to. That's not the reality for a kid that's born in a small town in Colombia.
Something that might also look different in the Colombian educational system compared to, other places, is that colleges do not have room and board. So if you go to a college, it's not like you go and live in the campus and the school provides you with, like a dorm or somewhere to live. Most of the people who live, in the main cities, they commute to college. But if you're coming from a rural area, you have to actually make the move, find a place to live, pay for it. So that adds a burden to the family, not having to account for their own expenses in the town, but also now having to pay for rent and food and transportation for the kid who's now moving to a different city, where oftentimes they have no one there. They know no one there. And that's a very hard transition, not only financially, but also emotionally. It's a huge change. And that when they get there, they face a lot of challenges. On one side, the academic challenge, but also like the, adapting and adjusting to this new place that they're very unfamiliar with, being away from home, and they have probably never left their towns or been away from their family for long periods of time. So it is really, really hard. And that's why we not only support them through the process of getting into college, but once they're in college, we continue to be there because the need is there. And we know that if we want them to be successful, they need more support as they adjust to this new lifestyle.
So layer upon layer upon layer, really, of barriers for these young people, starting with things that we might take for granted, like access to internet, a certain period, access to devices that you might need to connect with university application or higher education application processes. And then there's the transportation issue and just the physical distance before you start considering all the kind of social layers of complication. And I'm sure we could spend a whole podcast episode just unpacking those. One that I sort of popped up in my head when you were speaking there, and we didn't really cover this in our last conversation, was kind of it's relating to what you were saying around lack of kind of aspirational people around them supporting this push or transition into higher education. But I wonder, conversely, do you ever experience resistance from within those communities, given that a lot of them might be quite traditional in their outlook and think that actually change isn't perhaps necessary and that communities should stay the way that they are in these rural locations? And I'm only going on my kind of knowledge of some rural locations in Scotland and some people I know and trying to draw some parallels there. But is that another layer of complication that you experience when you're trying to engage families, perhaps, and communities, that actually things are fine the way they are and we don't need to be pushing our young people away from these communities and out into the big bad world?
Yes, the short answer. We do, and that's why one of the areas that we work with in our program is family engagement, and we work alongside with the families. I don't think there is a lot of resistance. I mean, let me rephrase that. Most of the families, or maybe all of the families, do acknowledge the importance and the power of education, and they want their young students and children to access that education and to aspire for greater things and change and transform their realities and live better lives and have better life quality. That, I think, it's like the baseline and the standard. However, when we face all of the changes that need to occur in order for that to actually happen, there's some resistance, and it's understandable, right? So family members that have been in their towns for generations, seeing their, I don't know, 15, 14, 16-year-old kid move to a major city, that might be terrifying. And it's genuine and it's true and it's completely valid, because that's the life that they've known. So it's like, yes, we want you to go to college, but we want you to stay by our side. And we want you to go to college, but we want you like not to go crazy in a major city. People are crazy, or like you'll have a very big lifestyle change and you're going to forget about the principles that we had at home. And that's a big, very big fear that definitely adds another layer of challenges in that transition for the students and for the community in general. We're also very lucky because we work with students that and families that want their kids to go to college. So in the community, there might be other people that have different perspectives, but we do have a selection process to ensure that the kids that we admit in the program and the students that we admit in the program are students who have a really high motivation about going to college and like a close to heart reason to pursue higher education. Many of them count with their family support throughout the program, and it might look a little bit different towards the end because of what I was explaining. The fears kind of get the best of people sometimes. So it is complicated. But in general, and I think as we have been working with the same communities over years and years, like we started in 2021, and two of the communities that we have been that we are working with this year, 2024, we have been working with since 2021. And we can see a little bit how that transformation occurs inside the community as well. It's very, very powerful how the idea of going into higher education kind of spreads a little bit in the community, and how it's not now Juliana and Carolina coming from major cities and having very different backgrounds, telling families like, it's okay, we can do this, you can do this, your kid can do this. But it's their own students and their own people in their own communities who are sharing the stories and saying like, I did it. Like, I come from this town. I graduated from the same school your child is 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And this is what I'm studying. And this is how my life been transformed. And all of these fears, yes, are true and are valid, but this is how I've sorted them out. And that's very, very powerful.
Yes, absolutely. I think building trust is what's most important, and what summarizes everything Caro has been talking about. It takes time, but once the community knows us, and once there's students who have been successful in that transition and who can go back and tell their stories, we start to see a little shift in the perception of the families and the communities, and that's very powerful. And it's one of our goals as well. It's not only to transform the reality of one or two families, but to, in the end, transform the whole community and have our students come back and make positive, powerful changes there.
It's a powerful vision, and it's incredible work that you're doing. And yeah, thanks for kind of going into a little bit of detail as to one of the complications and one of the barriers that you contend with. So tell us again, just following on from that, how do your programs work? How do you do this? Who's involved? Where are you working? It sounds hard. So like what do your programs look like?
Yes. So our program has like 3 different components that target challenges that we mentioned at the beginning. So we have a team of about 36 volunteer people, but we also work very closely with the school principals in schools and teachers, and as Caro mentioned, the families, to make sure that we're all like targeting that same goal, because we know just working with the students is not going to make it. We need to involve other community members in order for this to be successful. So the first component that we work with our students is the academic support that they need in order to get good test scores on the national standardized test that is going to allow them to compete in more equitable conditions for a seat in college. And that happens every Saturday. Our volunteer teachers have been supporting our students during 3 hours every Saturday for about 10 months before they take the national standardized test. And the second component is the psychosocial support. So every 2 weeks, the students participate in group sessions with our volunteer psychologists who guide them in all the process of exploring what are my strengths, what are my passions, what I'm interested in, to what does the college application process looks like, to, okay, let's apply to college, to, okay, today we're going to register the subjects for my first semester, to how can I find where to live. And that also it's supported by individual mentors who work one-on-one with the students. So that's the third component, and it's the mentoring. The mentor is a person who is more present in the life of the students, like in a more personalized and individualized way, to ensure the student well-being, overall well-being, to make sure that they can, prioritize their education, prioritize their goals, their dreams, because there's so many challenges that surround our students that can get in the way of that dream, of that goal that they have, that we want to make sure we are there to, appropriately address those issues that arise, and try to prevent in all possible ways that they, decide not to go to college, because, they want, and we want them to go to college, and we just want to make sure that, that they can do it.
Yeah. And then like more on the logistics part, it is a virtual program because the program takes place in many different towns at the same time. So 2024 is the year that we've had the most students. We are currently having 30 students in 4 different towns in Colombia. And since they're in different places and our volunteers are also Colombian people from all over the place, they're living, like we have people in the US, in Colombia, different cities here, but also in Europe, different places in South America. So the virtual nature of the program allows us to connect people from many different places and also to serve many different communities. It's also like a challenge because of what we were saying of conditions in these rural areas. Internet might be unstable and power might be unstable, but we have found like ways to navigate that. And also the students have been super proactive, and that's very, very beautiful to see. So they get together with friends, maybe at my house or my neighborhood, power is out, but in the neighborhood next door, my friend that's also in the program has power, so I'll travel there and just get together and attend class together. So it's virtual. That was one thing. And then the other thing is the program lasts for a whole year. So we start our classes on November, which is towards the end of the academic year here in Colombia. So students start on their what would be junior year, so the year before they finish high school, and we work with them throughout the whole senior year, the last year of high school. The program classes officially end towards late October, and then the next couple of months we work with them on the mentoring part and supporting them with the application process and waiting for college like answers and letting so they know if they were admitted or not, and then they move in with the transition. So it's officially a year. It since like 4 months after the year when they are admitted and they actually go and transition into higher education.
There's such incredible depth to the program in its current form, and you've clearly spent time understanding and addressing all of those complications and layers of barriers that young people in rural communities face when trying to enter higher education. And I'm wondering how much of that comes from, well, what you've learned along the way and how you've iterated each year on your programming, and how much of it comes from your personal backgrounds and experience and passions. And so I'm wondering if you could both speak to that a little bit, the kind of journey that you've been on. You can go back as far as you'd like to go, and it might even be into some of the reasons that you're doing the work that you're doing now, the kind of origin story, I guess. But how what's that journey been for the two of you, and how did you come together?
So Caro and I met back in 2018, right, Caro? Yeah, 2018 in Boston. We were both doing our masters at Boston University, different programs, but same College of Education. And I think both Caro and I share that passion for education, and we see education as a tool to transform the society, to transform people's realities. On the personal level, my parents didn't go to college. I'm a first generation, and I had to navigate, the system by myself. And yes, it was challenging, but I was in a city. I was able to take the bus, commute to college. But, as a teacher, I started to also see similar challenges that my students were facing, similar to the ones I faced. But when, I met Caro, and Caro knew the experience of students who lived in rural areas, I realized that the challenges were way deeper when you are not in a city. And, we wanted to change that. And we knew that, we had already gone through the process. We had already made it through those challenges and overcame those barriers that there are. And I wanted to allow that possibility for other students. Like, I've had access to many educational opportunities. I was able to get admitted into one of the best public universities in the country, and that gave me a lot of tools and a lot of resources that I wouldn't have access to otherwise. And, I would have never dreamed about, coming to Boston, doing a master's here, but one thing led to the other one. And I was like, if I had, the opportunity to have these experiences, I want more people to also access them as well, and to share, what helped me that can potentially help them.
My background's a little bit different. I come from a middle-class family. Both my parents went to college. And then when I decided to become a biologist, I attended a public university that's the largest here in Colombia. And that gave me the opportunity to travel many different places in Colombia. Being a biologist and having to do field work, we would go to remote areas and like explore the nature over there, but also gave me the opportunity to share with communities in those places. And being from like a more privileged background, attending a public university kind of shifted a little bit my perspective of what the country that we have and we live in is. I have always been instilled with like awareness of the privileged position I've held all my life, and also the need of giving back to the community and giving back to the country. A lot of just like social consciousness about that. So becoming a biologist at this public university and having those experiences kind of increased and solidified that commitment to what the country needs. And eventually I shifted from like more academic background into education because of that idea. I see education, as Julie was mentioning, as a path, as an engine for change, and as probably the most important and most real, in my personal opinion, mechanism to change things and transform lives, not only personal lives throughout experiences, but also societies. If we can understand and learn differently and see the difference and the diversity that we have in experiences in our country, we can, if we are aware of the inequalities that we have and we are aware of the power that we have to shift them, then we can start making a change. And that's my bet, and that's why I'm an educator, and that's why I teach, and what I try to teach my students. Yes, we teach biology, and yes, you learn about science, but the important thing is your like a competent citizen and a committed human being transforming the world. So finding Julie in this path was fantastic because we created this very concise program, started as kind of as a way of helping two students that I personally knew. And we didn't dream at the beginning about starting a nonprofit, having a huge program, having presence in many different areas in the country, and increasing and serving 30 students. That was kind of out of our dreams. We were thinking of like, this particular kid that I know, these two students that I know have a need, and we cannot just like sit here and see them not go to college because they have nobody to help them out. Like, we have to do something. And then, just as Julie was saying, one thing led to another, and here we are, almost 4 years later, with this project that has, I think, transformed us, not only professionally but personally, and has transformed the team of volunteers and the team of people that have joined, but also transformed the lives of over 80 students that have been part of the program. And it has been a huge learning curve in every aspect that we have been like challenged and faced to accomplish here, but also a beautiful path in which we have improved the program, and we have understood much better every year what the communities that we're working with are, what the needs are, and how we can serve them better in order to accomplish the goals that we have and that they have for their own personal lives.
Awesome. So you've got two incredibly passionate and compassionate people coming together to form this. And I'm wondering what's the difference between what you did initially, your first venture out there into the world with ConEducación, versus where you are now. It's great to hear that there's been growth and the number of young people you're working with has increased, which is great to hear. There's been some growth, some scale. But yeah, what's the big difference between then and now? And were there key moments in that journey, good or bad, challenging or otherwise, where, that really changed the direction or yeah, altered the path in any way for you?
So since the program lasts a full year, every year we're taking notes throughout the year, like, oh, for next year we need to tweak this and that and change this and change that. And big changes is, at first, our very first cohort, the program only lasted Julie, like 5 months, I think. We started sort of in April. So very first thing that we learned is the time needs to expand. Like 5 months is very, very short time for students. And also, since the beginning, we started with the academic and the psychosocial components. But then it was evident for us that the mentoring piece was missing, and that the support and the one-on-one kind of support that the students receive was mandatory. Julia and I were sort of the mentors for our first 15 students in the whole cohort, so we kind of intuitively ended up providing it, but we, for our second year and then on, realized that was a must that we should have. And another big change that we've had is kind of in the structure of it. As I was mentioning, Somos Bachilleres started with like doing, right? We need these things. We are both teachers, so we knew, like, okay, if we're thinking about college access, we need academics, we need the psychosocial support. So let's just put together the program methodologists, we need mentors, and we kind of set it up and get it running. And then it came all of the kind of organizational piece to the nonprofit and to the program. And that has been a very big challenge, but also, I think, especially this last year, major change in the effectiveness of the program. So organizing an admin staff and setting up like strategic planning, and yeah, just like all of that, more of a management piece that we did not have at the beginning, because we just like started with the classes and the operations. So that has been a very big change. That has also opened doors to not only more funding, not only increasing the impact and like increasing like the number of students, but also the places where we have students and the communities that we're serving, and the sustainability of the program itself. Because once we started like with the operation, it was the day by day, but it was difficult to think ahead. It's still kind of difficult, and we're still learning in that process, but that has also given us the opportunity of making a longer term plan, and finding new like alliances and partnerships with other organizations and other people.
I would add to that, it's also the kind of experiences that we're providing the students with. Like at the beginning, we'll visit the town once a year, and we would, be in frequent communication with the students. But we knew if we wanted them to see themselves as, potential professionals who could attend these colleges, we needed to provide them with those kind of experiences that allowed them to think outside the box. So for this past cohort, we, for the first time, with one of the towns, we took them to visit some college campus in Bogota. And for the students in Orocué, and the ones in La Calera as well, they travel to take a mock-up test, like a practice test that you will think, yeah, that's super accessible. They will take it in their schools. No, they don't. It's super inaccessible. They had to travel 6 hours to take a 9-hour-long test. But we made a whole experience out of it, and they spend the night at a hotel. So there was like a whole motivational piece that was added to the program, and that allowed them to see themselves like, oh, I could be, that student who goes to this college, and I want to be here. I see myself here. So those kind of experiences, I think, are very powerful as well, and it's something that we have added to the program. And just overall, like connecting students with different opportunities. Like on one hand is the students who are already in college, who are facing challenges. So sometimes they reach us to us like, oh, I'm struggling with this class. I have this midterm coming up and I need strategies on how to study, how to manage my time. I'm struggling with this. And so being able to support them in that as well, or connect them with opportunities within their colleges that can help them, or like students who are currently in the program who are facing other sorts of challenges as well, and just being more prepared to support them with the things that they need along the way.
And one more thing that we've also improved in time is the relationship. Julie was mentioning we work really closely with principals and teachers at school. That was not the case at the very beginning. We only had contact with the students, but we have noticed the importance of, teachers and principals are the ones who actually have the kids in front of them day by day. We are super far away from the kids. So partnering with the schools has been a key and really, really meaningful and significant change that we included, and with the families. And that's also, we have like one of the biggest goals that we have for 2024 is increasing and improving that family engagement and family support, because we have focused on the preparation for the students, but as we were talking before, families also need that preparation. So we are improving and working with that. And in terms of experiences and partnerships, we've also found like a lot of different partners that have improved the program. So this year we're working with another organization, it's called B+ Foundation, in which they're going to help us provide the academic preparation. They have over 20 years of experience doing that academic preparation for the test. So that increases the effectiveness of the program. And also we are 100% sure at ConEducación that collaboration is the way to go. Like, we don't know everything, we don't have to know everything, and there are great people that have excellent experience and are really, really strong at what they do. So partnering with those people has definitely been super helpful, and one big shift that we've had.
It's really been a journey of discovery for the two of you over a number of years, by the sounds of things. And I have to say that is a common story we hear from many founders. There's ups and downs, and there's a great deal of learning has to happen along the way. I wonder, the co-founder relationship that you have, you both seem to be on the same wavelength, and be very well aligned in kind of the way that you see the world and want to create change in it. And I know, speaking on behalf of the co-founder, that the co-founder relationship, like any relationship, can be complex. But I sense that there's some fun in your program, and despite the difficult circumstances that you're dealing with, and some of the barriers that young people face, you're bringing an element of lightness and fun to this. Is that a fair kind of assessment? And how much does that kind of lightness, or I don't know the best word to describe it, if fun is the right word, but is some element of what I'm saying important to keeping going and doing this year on year?
Definitely. I would have to say, on my personal experience, that I found a very supportive partner in Caro. Like, I've gone through a lot of stages throughout the program, like being a full-time teacher and doing this, in evenings, weekends. It can be challenging sometimes to sort all of that out and to have that, personal life work balance. And, already teaching is a lot. So I found a lot of support in Caro in moments of like crisis or difficulties, or where I feel like I can't keep going. Caro has always been very supportive, and she's taking a lot of leadership. She's been devoted to ConEducación full time for the past like year and a half, and that I think has helped us grow a lot. And also something I've learned is to acknowledge like what are your strengths and your areas of growth, and be able to step to the side when that there's more people in the team who can help the nonprofit growth. And I think that was something that was very hard at the beginning, because we were kind of like, we had many roles within the organization. We were doing marketing, we were doing accounting, we were doing legal stuff, or like managing, or like a lot of things at the same time, and being afraid to let that go, or to like we describe it as this baby that we have been growing and that you're afraid to let go. But we also have learned along the way that we have an incredible team, and like I think the nature of the program brings in people with the same passion, with the same aspirations, with the same desire to create change. So there is not really a reason to be afraid, because if you let it go, there can be a lot of growth too, and there's more people who can bring in a lot of good new things and ideas. And so yeah.
Yeah, and I would say it's also part of, I guess, our Latin American culture. I don't know, it's when you face so many difficulties as our countries do, you have to lighten up somehow. So when we see our students and we go in the visits, they are battling against big odds, and they have so many difficulties, and you go and see them and they are the happiest kids and the most motivated, and they are so brave and so strong and so resilient. So that for me is like the biggest motivation in this work that we do at ConEducación. I always say that they are probably my greatest teachers in this process, and also the reason why, if I feel that there's, I don't know, things that get too complicated, and the times that we have been like, okay, that's it, I am not sure if I can go any further, and you go and see the kids, and it's like, I mean, my students are giving their 400% against a system that puts everything layer upon layer upon layer of difficulties, and they are saying like, no, I've got this, like I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to quit. How am I going to quit? Like, no, that's not possible. So we receive and like recharge from that energy, and we move on, and it's a beautiful team, as Julie was saying. It's great people, and I think one of the seals of ConEducación that probably makes me more proud is the human quality of everybody involved in the program: students, families, mentors, teachers, psychologists, all volunteers, staff members, admin, everybody's such a beautiful human being that makes it amazing to be part of it.
It sounds like incredibly rewarding work to be doing, but yeah, not without its
It is.
difficulties and challenges, I'm sure. And yeah, look, we're so pleased to be a small part of that journey that you're on, and I'm wondering, what is next for the two of you and for ConEducación in 2024. I mean, we're hoping you're coming back to the Global Innovation Challenge 2024 program. But I'm sure you've got other important things happening this year.
I was just going to say, before answering that what's come next, I wanted to name that you're not a small part, and I think one of the things that I have appreciated the most of being part of the incubator program of social shifters, like throughout 2 years, is that community that's created, and you can see it there too. Like when you're working with social entrepreneurs and people who are spending their time thinking how to make the world a better place, you are just surrounded by really nice people. So that has also been important for us, and we've not only learned from the program, and we've grown a lot since last year with our first experience in the incubator program, but also connecting with other people worldwide that have just like similar mindsets. So thank you for that. And whereas what comes next, this year we have started many different projects, and we have grown significantly, as I was mentioning, many new partnerships, many new goals and things that we had not thought of starting before. And I think one of the goals that we have for 2024 is working on that sustainability piece that has been a big challenge for us, especially in terms like financial terms. Our program is free 100% for families and students. we didn't mention that layer of difficulty, but financial hardship is another obstacle that they face when accessing higher education. So our program needs to be accessible for them. And that means that we need to find the resources and the funding from other like sources that's not like charging for the product that we offer our students. But that has brought a sustainability challenge. So this year we have been working on thinking of projects that can help us with that sustainability. We worked with a project with the Colombian consulate that also opened, the Colombian consulate in Boston, that opened a new venue of work that we can do. Probably I'll let Julie maybe talk more about that. But focusing on sustainability is one of the goals. And we're still figuring out how to do it, right? This year, Julie was mentioning in the past year and a half, I've been full-time dedicated to ConEducación. Unfortunately, we cannot do that anymore. We cannot afford that anymore. So I'll also start teaching next Monday, actually. So shifting a little bit those responsibilities and reorganizing the team to make sure that we are letting go and relying on the amazing team that we have more in order to continue growing and finding that balance. So yeah, big projects to come. We're thinking of offering new services to wider communities so that we can not only increase the impact, but also just like balance and reach that point of sustainability.
The great partner we had this past year, we ran a pilot with the Colombian consulate of a program here in Boston called Paving My Way to College, which is like kind of like a version of Somos Bachilleres, but in Boston for Colombian students here in Boston. So, the percentage of students, of Colombian students in Boston that access higher education is very low. It's, a big working class, very hardworking people who want to get ahead in life, who want to also access opportunities, but they get trapped in it's hard and I don't know how to do it and I want to do it, but the system is complex as well. So we are supporting those students also in their transition to higher education. There's a huge Colombian community here in Boston, and we had the opportunity to get close to the Colombian consulate at a conference we participated on earlier last year. And they saw us as, they want to know about higher education access. We have this need in our community here in Boston, and we want to work with them. So we had our first pilot from October to December last year. And, we're excited about the next phase of this program coming up 2024.
Right. Anything else? I mean, is that all that you? It's going to be a busy time for you guys, but it's great to hear that you are growing and changing and transitioning and experimenting with new things, which is exactly what social startups should be doing. So we're wishing you the best of luck with all of that. To tie up our conversation today, and I've asked you this question before, but I'm going to ask you again to reframe it maybe in the context of the last year, because I'm sure you've learned lots of things on your journey, but maybe some new things in the last year as you're maybe starting to grow and scale your programs. It's a different kind of phase that you're in as an organization. If you could go back, let's say a year in time, you could hop in a time machine and it would buzz you back just for a few minutes, a few moments with your former self. And after your former self had got over the shock of that, you appearing to them from the future, what would you use those few minutes to tell your former self about the year ahead?
To not get down when a door closes, because every door that closes brings the avenue for more opportunities and more doors that are going to open. Like, I'm not gonna lie, we were very sad and discouraged when we got the bad news. We hadn't got the prize last year when we applied. And you always question, like, what are we doing wrong? Like, what could we have done better? And it's discouraging, especially because it's not like just one grant that you applied and it's denied. It's like you're constantly applying to different grants, different opportunities, and when it's like a run of like, sorry but not this time, sorry but not this time, it's like, ouch. it's hard and it hurts, and it's very easy to feel like I can't do this anymore. But I would tell myself like, yes, you can do it, and this is not the last word, and other opportunities will come. And we were very happy that we reapplied and that we were able to get it this time. And the other piece of advice I would say, to not be afraid to transition with the organization. The organization is never going to be the same. It's the way it starts, it's not going to stay like that. And if you're afraid to let it go, it's not going to grow, and you have to just move with it. And yeah.
I would start by adding out there, you not only have to move with it, but you also have to trust yourself and trust the work that you have done, which is not easy. I mean, maybe it's easy to trust the work, but then that piece of letting go, it's always like a little bit, I don't know, icky and scary. But if you just focus on the things that you have done and trust the work and the team that you've built, it is going to be okay. And I think one of the the greatest things that I've appreciated towards the end of 2023, when I decided I needed to start teaching again, and I shared with the team, is it is scary, yes, but I'm so confident that it is going to be not only okay, but it's going to be the best for the organization to shift now and pass it on to you, because you're amazing, and this is going to bring new light, new ideas, new perspectives to the program, and it's going to be for the best. So I would add that to the advice. And the other thing that I would say, and it's one of the major learnings I have from this year, is that piece of sustainability. I think we know our mission, and we have that like upfront center, most important thing we've always going to work for, and it's the students. But the organization piece and the longer term projection, it's also very important. And if we only focus on the kids, as we did, I don't know, years 1, 2, half of year 3, you end up knowing like hitting a wall, because at some point it's just not going to be possible. You cannot continue operating day by day without thinking of a larger term, or you could, but then it's just going to stay at that very small scale that you wanted. And it's fine. It's fine if you want to keep it that way. But if you envision your project growing, and if you envision having a longer term impact, it's really important since the beginning to think and consider, how are you going to make it sustainable? We're still figuring the answer for that. So unfortunately, my former self wouldn't have an answer, but we'll probably have more time to think, and we'll get faster to the solution. But we'll get there. But it is very important. It doesn't mean that the priority needs to shift from what your mission is, and the priority is never going to shift from our students. We know they're the reason, they're the center, and they're everything of what we do. But in order to serve them, we have to think about all of these other pieces.
Incredible and very honest advice there to anyone who is listening and doing similar work. So thank you for sharing that with us. Yuliana, Carolina, it is always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for joining me again on the Social Shifters podcast, and for sharing more of your story and insights with us. Me and the team at Social Shifters wish you all the very best this year with everything that you've got planned. And yeah, we look forward to welcoming you back to our programs sometime in 2024.
Thank you, Dave, for having us back. And thank you for all of the opportunities and doors you've opened for us as well.
If you want to learn more about Social Shifters and how we can help you to impact the social or environmental issues that matter to you most, subscribe to our YouTube channel or find us on Instagram and Spotify.